Hello, chefs. This is Chef's PSA, and I'm your host, Andre Natera. Today, I welcome back Tracy Malechek-Ezekiel, chef and co-owner of Birdie's in Austin. On this episode, we talk about transforming the dining experience, from Birdie's shift to prefix menus, to how that decision unlocked creativity, sustainability, and a better work-life balance for the team. We dig into storytelling, seasonal cooking, kitchen culture, and what it really takes to build a restaurant that works for both guests and chefs. Stay tuned. Great restaurants don't always bring customers in. Great stories do. Because in food, beverage, and hospitality, what you sell is only part of the story. It's the why behind it, the authority you create, and the experience that you build. Market Scale turns expertise into content that connects. Podcasts, video series, and industry education. Not ads, assets. Market Scale has brought Run the Pass and How to Manage Like an Executive Chef to life. Real-world examples of how great content leads the conversation. Because attention is earned, and the industry doesn't need more noise, it needs more leaders.
So did you get some new glasses?
So for Christmas, I wanted to get these Meta AI glasses. The reason I got them is because I want to record content behind the scenes. So obviously I go out and eat or whatever the case may be, but specifically for the podcast, so people can get a little teaser who's coming up, what's going to happen. Maybe they can see it from my point of view. So yeah, I don't wear glasses. I have laser eyes. I had LASIK a couple of years ago. Best investment I've ever done. But for this, it's like, okay, I'm part cyborg now. So yeah, so people will get to see a little bit of a little teaser of Tracy coming on the show.
Cool.
Yeah. So by the way, what's going on? You got a lot going on. I want to ask you about all these changes that are going on at Birdie's.
So in April, we shifted from a la carte menu, which we had for 4 years. We shifted to a prefix menu. So we changed the menu every 3 to 4 weeks in entirety, top to bottom. There's kind of a rough placeholder of a soup. Usually, not always. And there's always a soft serve. So kind of beyond that, it's just see where the month takes us.
Well, what sparked the change?
I was really feeling handcuffed creatively with what we could cook. We have a 3-foot wide plancha, flat top, and a 3-foot wide French top, a big rationale, and a small counter fryer. And that's kind of it. So we also have 75 seats. So considering those things and thinking about how busy we were lucky enough to be, I was just feeling like, okay, another plancha roasted fish, another minute steak. Okay. And at a certain point, I felt like I can do more, but I can't physically do it here. Mm-hmm. And my cooks are very talented. They can do more. They want to learn more. And it's my job as their chef to give them more challenges. I also feel like on Friday, Saturday nights, we were really busy. And at the end of service, I could just see it in our team's face, like we are cooked. And we do so much to promote work-life balance, 5-day work week. We close for over a month a year and pay our team. Incredible insurance package, parental leave. And so even though we're really taking into consideration and accounting for a good work-life balance, I just felt like we were just feeling kind of drained. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you know what? Our job, like, what if we do a reset? And what if we shift a prefix? And we've never been afraid of taking calculated risks when it feels right. And it just felt like the right time to try something new, to tighten things up a little bit. I kind of joke like Friday, Saturday nights felt like a big fun party, but it just wasn't quite as consistently controlled as I would want it to be.
So let's explain to people, because you're talking about doing a prefix menu, but this is not a tasting menu. So they're two different things, right? So from a traditional tasting menu versus a prefix, what is different for the audience listening of what you're serving right now, when people think about, okay, I'm serving a tasting menu or versus I'm serving a prefix menu?
Sure. So I think there are a few different variations of a prefix itself and then a tasting menu itself. I really was inspired, and Arjav, my husband and business partner, really liked kind of the European style neighborhood restaurant prefix menu. It kind of felt like this affordable luxury, menu of the day kind of thing, even though we do change it every 3 to 4 weeks. And then within that, things will change when need be. But I feel like for us, it's 6 courses, $79. There's a snack, a soup, or an app, another app, like a hot app, and then pasta, entree, dessert. And then there's usually an add-on. Maybe that's a house-made focaccia. Maybe that's spaghetti with caviar or truffle or kind of whatever is kind of floating through that moment in time.
How did you announce to the staff that this is what they're doing? How was it received? Would they get super excited, or was it like, uh-oh, here comes more work?
So our team was actually like, huh, okay, all right. And I think, just by nature of birdies being birdies and who we are, we've always taken risks. Like our first ILOs that we ever did, which is our red sauce pop-up inspired by my late grandfather, Phil Aiello, the Thursday before the next week. So we're closed Sunday, Monday. So Tuesday, I was like, let's do Aiellos. And then that was set. Had no recipe testing, no menu down. I was just like, let's cook red sauce next Tuesday. And that was our very first ILO. So I think our team has always been used to just, let's go for it. Let's just cook. Let's go. And our team is not like, it's not like a set it, forget it menu. It's never been a set it, forget it menu. It's always been changing. It's always been alive. And our team, I think, knows Arjav and I both like to kind of keep everybody on their toes. And I feel like the best restaurants are the ones that are always changing and evolving and not just, this set moment in time. It's just, it keeps progressing.
By the way, I love red sauce. I love red sauce Italian. So unfortunately, I missed it. What was on the menu?
So for Aiellos, we do it twice a year,
Uh-huh.
our Aiellos menu, February and October. So there's usually mozzarella sticks and meatballs, whole fennel seeds, my family's thing. I just feel like they pop more than when they're ground. There's usually a pasta with vodka sauce, tiramisu, and then other things within that change. But those are kind of the pillars of the menu.
So Aiellos tell me about that. And maybe for the audience, what's the connection? So you said it's your grandfather. Was your grandfather's restaurant?
No. So my grandfather was from Calabria, Italy, tip of the boot.
Yeah.
And he lived in a very poor village. And he came to to Brooklyn when he was 12, quarter in his pocket kind of story. Had a few siblings and lived through just a very poor time growing up, was a self-made man. He served in the army. He was the only member of his platoon to come back alive. He's fighting against his own country. I can't imagine that was easy for him. Played baseball in college, moved down to Texas, and with my grandmother, who was Irish from the Bronx, tough as nails. And he started, his family here and a construction company. And just the way he lived his life was it's kind of a no BS. I'm just going to get it done, work hard, don't ask for anything, that kind of like tough immigrant, attitude. And he was just an inspiration to me. And yeah, I love him so much.
So is that the food that you guys grew up eating kind of at your grandparents' house?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes on Sundays we did. My mom worked a lot, and that's probably where I got my work ethic. But on Sundays was family cook day.
So now that you've introduced the quarterly changing prefix menu,
Monthly changing.
Monthly changing.
Yeah, every 4 weeks it changes.
Oh, geez, I don't know why I heard quarterly. That's absolutely insane.
It is a great challenge to change the menu every 4 weeks from top to bottom.
So you're going in. You talked about earlier. You said let's just cook.
Mm-hmm.
So how much time preparation and R&D is going between January 31st and February 1st?
There's not a lot of R&D happening. I'm going to be honest. I'm trying to tighten things up a little bit, and I have two amazing sous chefs. And the goal is a couple weeks, 2 Fridays before the new menu, I sit down with them, show them the rough draft of the menu. If there's anything we want to test out, we test those few things out. For example, our recent menu, this is January when we're recording, North Italy is the menu.
Uh-huh.
And
So you just came back, right?
we just came back from break. We're,
Yeah.
closed for 2.5 weeks over our winter break. And I wrote the menu Saturday, finalized it Sunday/Monday. Tuesday was a prep day. We opened Wednesday. So nothing got tested for that. So what I do is I kind of sketch out recipes.
Yeah.
Usually.
Yeah.
Other times I'll tell a cook to grab 5 things and then we'll kind of write the menu together. So the prep day is important. Day 1 of the menu is important because we don't do the day before prep day where we're closed, except for when we're returning from a break.
Mm-hmm.
Usually day 1 is day 1 we're open to the public. And I think it's really important to teach cooks how to cook and the whys and the hows, not just here's a recipe grammed out. Go. Let's do this together. And I'm going to ask you questions. And tomorrow it might look different based on what that ingredient is and how it's looking today and when it was harvested. And is it overgrown? Is this even the right dish anymore? Do we need to change this right now? And like asking all of these questions. So it's really important to me that cooks are in tune with what they're working with and are actually learning the skill of cooking.
When you talk about the culinary team that's around you, so you mentioned your sous chefs and your cooks are all very talented. I'm assuming they're talented in their own right before they came to you, but they've also picked up a little bit of the way that you cook, and it's now incorporated in their identity. So do you guys have like an unspoken language and you say, do this, they know exactly what you mean? Like they're already starting to think like you?
Yeah, I mean, so my exec Sue Hije has been with me since day 1. We opened 4.5 years ago, and she was a sous chef before she got to Birdie's, but she started off on Garde Manger because in the beginning I was the only kitchen sous chef or chef. I had no managers, and our job was the only person in the dining room. We were very scrappy, lean and mean in the beginning. But since then, and she had cooked at Gramercy Tavern where I cooked, but she worked in the generation after me. But we already had a common language of the way we worked in a kitchen, treating people with respect, the way we took care of ingredients, just kind of like that fundamental connectivity. She just spoke my language. So that was great. And then Phil has been with me over 3 years. My AM sous chef. He was also a sous chef before he got to Birdie's, but started off as a cook like everyone does, and learned the way we worked, which is, it is a more spontaneous style, less kind of locked in place than most restaurants. And I think the cooks that succeed at Birdie's, especially the ones who've been with me for a long time, they love that. And they're cooks. Like they like to talk about what they're cooking on the weekend, and they like to challenge themselves, and they like to learn new things. And they don't just want to have an easy work day every day.
Did you work with, when you were at Gramercy, did you ever cross paths with Tom Colicchio, or was that before your time?
He was before Mike Anthony.
Did you ever work with him at all?
I didn't.
So did you see the, I don't know if it was Eater, someone put out a little video on YouTube about him behind the scenes at Craft. Did you see it?
I didn't.
It was great. And I loved it because, they're redoing what they're doing at Craft. So he kind of gives us a little bit of history there. And he talks about, we're doing a tasting menu, and he's kind of prepping it as they go. And I'm watching it, and he's talking about food, and I'm watching him make pasta, and they're braising short ribs, and it's like, they're cooking.
Yeah.
They're cooking.
Yeah.
And he's talking about food and cooking. It's like, I feel like we're getting back to that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of got lost a little bit in the vanity of social media cooking.
Mm-hmm.
But it does feel a little bit soulless.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when you say, oh, wow, that's a lot of shaved vegetables and microgreens.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pluches, and they're really beautiful nasturtiums. But I'd rather have a perfectly cooked pasta, or a braised short rib, or a perfectly cooked piece of meat than the most beautiful flowers, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just don't get that. I don't wake up in the middle of the night and say, you know what, I'm craving a big bowl of flowers.
Same.
Same,
And
right?
it's funny because he's been into to Birdie's, and I've gotten to know him a little bit for the past couple years. And yeah, I really respect his philosophy and his style, and actually trailed at Craft like 20 something years ago when I was in culinary school at CIA.
Yeah, I was very impressed with his philosophy on food. I mean, I think he's always been upfront with it, but just seeing that he's still Because you think of Tom Colicchio, like he's the top chef, celebrity, but like he's still a chef.
Oh,
Like
he's a chef.
he still likes to cook.
He loves to fish and he loves to cook.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty impressive, and he gets it. Like
Mm-hmm.
he sees through the bullshit.
100%.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times when you're a young cook, it's easy to get distracted in the flowers and the this, that, and the other, and the vanity metrics and the everything else that goes into Instagram food. I don't want to call it Instagram food because I'm not knocking it, because some of that Instagram food is very delicious as well. But it's easy to want to start doing all this other stuff and forgetting, like, but you got to know how to cook first.
I would 100% agree. And I would also tell young cooks, learn how to cook, learn how to braise, learn how to stew, learn how to pan roast. Just learn the basics before you start getting distracted with those, with molecular gastronomy even. Look at Grant Achatz. He is amazing chef, but he's also a fantastic cook. And he learned how to, cook at a very high level at the French Laundry before he became that. And I think learning and establishing those fundamentals early is so important. Yeah. And on the short rib note, last week we were sketching out a short rib recipe. I mean, short ribs, sure, like, let's just cook, let's go. We were looking at it and we prepped out the mirepoix, and then EJ was putting it on top, and I was like, ooh, that feels like too much. Let's take out a third of it. Let's adjust this note. You know what I mean? And like, just like cooking at it, because sometimes you just need to look at it and see what the right amount is.
Yeah. It's funny. I've been cooking a lot at home lately. And I think if I'm making a bechamel, which I don't make bechamel that much, but now I'm making bechamel again, mm-hmm. and I'm making roux. And I'm cooking the roux out, and I'm tasting the sauce, and I'm like, I forgot that roux has a flavor too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's just starting to think, like, I got so much into the, like, avoid roux, avoid flour, and it's like there's something beautiful about the classic cooking, at least for me, because it's flavor memories of how I was a young cook,
right,
making lobster bisque or whatever, right? But anyway, I could go down the nostalgia route at length. But if you were bringing someone new that you'd never met, and you were going to start mentoring them, like, hey, let's start building you some culinary skills, where would you start?
I would start them probably on the line. And we have 4 stations currently on the PM line. Mm-hmm. And every menu, it looks different. Literally every menu, not only is an entirely new menu every 3 or 4 weeks, mm-hmm. but everyone's on a different station in a different location in the kitchen, using different equipment, different plates, making different dishes. So I'd probably put them on the more straightforward station. That being said, when I say straightforward, nothing's really easy at Birdie's. Like, if we have a salad on that menu, cooks are like, initially might think, oh, it's just a salad. That's probably the station I'm on top of most. Mm-hmm. And there might be an issue just because there's so many things that can go wrong when you're composing a salad. How were the greens received? How were they, washed, cut? How were they stored? How are they being held on the line? Where the backup's being held? Is the low boy too hot? Does it need to go, for service? Do the greens need to go in the walk-in and just you got to run and go grab them? How big is your bowl? Does it seem like the right size? Because it should be a bigger bowl than you think you need. That way you can toss it and make it really fluffy, and you're not just like weighing the vinaigrette down and like, mm-hmm. God forbid you take out the tongs. Like, put on gloves and like gently make the salad. And there's so many things that in doing everything that require detail and attention. I think I can't really say there's an easy station, but I would probably start them there just to learn those fundamentals, because they're so important. And I think to cook, or if you're roasting a vegetable, let's say, it is just as hard to perfectly roast a vegetable, in my opinion, than it is cook a piece of fish or meat. Mm-hmm. To really be locked in. The vegetables shouldn't just be like the forgotten about component. They matter just as much. And I think in terms of like cuisine and, talking about making a roux, even though like we don't, probably 11 months of the year, we don't cook like that, but we do bistro Remy in December, mm-hmm. inspired by our family trip to Paris when my son was 6 months old, and we had flight miles like on Delta about to expire. And so we're like, we got to go somewhere. And our job had never been to Paris. We went to Paris, had this incredible, magical family trip where we were like hitting the first seating of the night at like, 5:15. Our job, and I would share a bottle of wine and then walk back, with a stroller to our hotel. And it was just the best. And we were like, we should do a bistro Remy at Birdie sometime. And so that was kind of the inspiration for that. So we do make, bechamel, mornay, pâte à choux, things like that we don't typically make at Birdie's, because typical Birdie's is inspired by the Italian grandmother and French Nouvelle cuisine, which is, clean, straightforward, vegetable base, reduction base style cooking, where everything's made fresh, versus the Escoffier style of the roux, salsa espagnole, those types of things.
I want to go back to the salad. So for a young cook listening, or a new cook that's in culinary school and say, okay, I think I know how to make a salad. You put all the lettuce in a bowl and you toss it. And then you get the big tongs and right. If you had a cook right here with you and you said, okay, let me teach you how to, let me walk you through the steps of how to properly dress greens. How do you teach people?
Well, first of all, I would say it depends on the greens, because we make a Caesar salad at Ellos differently than we make, a baby mixed green salad.
Let's go with the baby mixed green.
So the baby mixed green salad, I would say get a really big bowl, greens, and I like a lot of herbs in my salad, usually.
Fresh herbs, like dill or parsley?
Yeah, kind of depending on what the style of that salad is. So I'll just grab a few. Maybe it's really nice fine brunoise shallot, nice chives, cut with a sharp knife as well. Picked perhaps parsley, maybe throw in some dill, and then a nice vinaigrette on the side of the bowl, not on the greens directly. And then I really like literally putting on gloves and then just tossing it. And then so it's like all mixed, but it's not, if you see a cook doing this, we got problems. Take the bear claw away. At tasting it, and then a lot of times we'll add, depending on what the dish is, a dot of fresh lemon if it needs it, or a dot of Ligurian olive oil if it needs it. It just kind of depends on that dish. And then, placing it, when you plate it, I really like as if it fell from heaven, and not squashing it down, just kind of letting it fall. And I think there truly is an art to plating a nice salad.
Yeah. I used to give my cook shit. I would say, with your farmer hands going in there, crushing up all the lettuce. But yeah, I hated seeing that. It's almost like they're trying to crunch it when they're tossing. It's like, what are you doing? Don't do that. Gentle.
You're bruising the greens.
Exactly. Yeah. No, but you're right. A good salad is delicious. I love a good salad. I think, one of my friends, every time we go out and eat, he always order the salad, and I never get salads. I think last time you were here, we were talking about soup. I love soup. But salads, good salad. And I think that's why I don't get salads often, is they're usually not good. They're usually an afterthought.
Right.
We got to have this and that on the menu. We have to have a salad. So put this on it. But a good salad, a thoughtful, intentional salad, could be excellent.
I totally agree. And on our prefix menus now, we haven't had many salads. We've had a couple. It made sense for the Bistro Remy menu, because that menu was gougere stuffed with mornay and topped with black pepper. It was cauliflower soup with brown butter. And then it went to salad, which made sense because you wanted this Banyuls vinaigrette that's bright and herby, with no cheese on top or anything, just something crisp and fresh to kind of break everything else. Because after that, you went to beef bourguignon, or you went to a house-made sausage with pomme puree and pork sauce. So with all of that richness, I think menu balance is really important to consider as well, when composing a menu. And I just want, if I'm sitting there eating that meal, I want that bright salad. And for me, making menus, it's not about my ego or feeling chefy. It's about what makes sense and what do I want to eat.
So something I've been thinking a lot about lately is the flow of menu. So I ate at this restaurant, and I won't say where, but I ate at this restaurant recently that was doing a tasting menu. And the food was beautiful, and it was also delicious. But I could tell it was a young chef, because they didn't know that they shouldn't kill the palate on the first course. The very first course was curry and cream and foam, and I was like, and then right after that, I went into something, that was that's the wrong thing, and that was served with champagne. I just remember thinking the food was beautiful, but a lot of times I don't think people think it all the way through. They just want to put their greatest hits and all their cool ideas.
Right.
not thinking about the customer experience or the guest experience. Like you need to start and don't kill the palette, and you got to build up.
Yes.
You got to know when to reset and refresh the palette. So how do you go about thinking now that you're designing this prefix menu? That's something that you have to think about. It's the way that they eat it. It's the way that they experience it. How do you go about building those flavor profiles? And if you were going to give someone advice that's listening, how do you organize the flavor profile throughout the menu?
So for me, prefix has actually helped me a lot in terms of menu composition. I mean, in a way it's much harder, and in a way it's easier. Every menu has its own inspiration. So maybe that's the French Riviera in the summer when it's hot and the weather's in Austin is similar to that of Provence, or the French Riviera. Maybe it's menu Sicily, and that's where I'm looking for inspiration. In November, we did an autumn harvest menu that was, as always, Central Texas inspired or focused ingredients, but still looking at Italy and France for kind of direction. And so because I feel like every menu has a clear focus, I don't get distracted with other things to put on it. It just, to me, makes so much sense, and it's so obvious. So for example, going with this, I'll start with this Northern Italy menu we have right now. And we're starting, we start with gnocco fritto draped with prosciutto di Parma. And a little bit of olive oil, like fresh pressed olive oil. It's a very simple bite. And we were actually traveling in Northern Italy over our summer break in August. So we did Veneto, Trentino Alto Adige, and Emilia Romagna. And this menu feels a lot of the Emilia Romagna influences, I think. So that bite specifically was from Modena. And, pillowy fried dough, yeasted dough, draped with perfect prosciutto di Parma and fresh pressed olive oil, black pepper. Like, forget about it, And to me, that's just, it's something that's so true of that place, especially Emilia Romagna. It has a history, and that's what they snack on. And I, had them a lot when I was there. And so every menu I start with, I think about what is the inspiration of that place and what would they start with there. And so for me, it's like, it's really easy to figure out how to do that, because it's not like, oh, I can pull from anything in the world. It's like, I have a very clear place. There are some times where my issues with building our menus is more like, how can we execute that? Having a very small space, it's great challenges. So it's like, okay, can we plug in the fryer there and have the mini oven going? You know what I mean? And it's really like a fun challenge to make these menus, because one, okay, figuring out the inspiration. Two, what are the dishes that hopefully can go on the menu? Three, can we execute them in our physical space with time constraints of service? Like a dish can't be a 30-minute pickup. That probably won't work unless it's an entree, and we can plan for that from the past and the way we're expediting.
So now going back to the menu creation process, I'm sure there's some guardrails here, because it still has to fall within what the perceived Birdie's identity is, right?
Yeah, I mean, the way the food I cook is seasonal American with Italian and French influences. So within that umbrella, which feels huge, the more I think about all the menus we can do, for me, it's like more time, because we're also influenced by the weather. So I'm not going to cook, let's say, I don't know, menu Piedmont whenever it's hot outside, and it's usually hot out here. So because we only have a few cold months here in Austin, I have to be really selective. So I wasn't sure, for example, this month, if I was going to do just Trentino Alto Adige, which is, Northeast Italy. We stayed in the Dolomites, which was magical and dreamy, and I highly recommend if you ever have the chance. But that is like very German inspired Italian cuisine. They speak German there as their first language, Italian mostly as their second, because it used to be under German rule. And the cuisine there is more cabbage, it's speck. So we did sneak in a cabbage apple soup on this menu. But because we only have a few cold months, and we also want to do bistro at me in December, it's like, oh, let's just call this menu Northern Italy, but like pull out dishes from different regions in Northern Italy. Because I really like to get nerdy, and our team, I think, does too, and like dial in on a region. And like, Menu Sicily was like, let's do this Texas Wagyu beef involtini, like stuffed with breadcrumbs, cacio chili, lemon zest, garlic, grill it over coals. I never had that dish,
Yeah.
but it's like traditional Sicilian shepherd's dish. And I think there's like a real beauty in celebrating history, but still keeping with the Italian and French mindset of like using what's growing around you.
How's the change been received?
Pretty good, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think in the beginning, it took me like a menu or two to get my footing down and figuring out the right progression and kind of what worked, because it was a very different menu shift. So we were always changing the menu every day in some capacity before, but that was kind of more with the garnish or a snack or something. But this menu has just been totally different.
But I'm thinking about, you said earlier, like you always have this, that, pasta, meat course, etc. So you do have a little bit of a formula that is predictable for the team to understand. Like, hey, there's some guardrails here, right?
Yeah, I think having the format of a snack into a soup or a cold bite, maybe that could sometimes be, I don't know, a crudo plate or something, if it makes sense in a hot month. Into a hot app, into a pasta, maybe, into probably a pasta, because we don't have a pasta for the French bistro menu, into an entree. Right now we have cotechino with lentils and mostarda, or Texas Wagyu short rib with polenta, turnip greens, and 10-year balsamic. There's oftentimes a fish option. There's not this menu because it didn't make sense. And there's also a vegetarian option. So like the menu right now, it's like, it's a roasted eggplant with polenta, turnip greens, oven dried tomatoes, balsamic, nice olive oil. And I actually would order that dish as well. I think it's delicious. And to dessert. So there is that formula for that, I guess, formula that works. So at least there's kind of placeholders, but they're not set in stone.
I want to ask you, transitioning a little bit in the conversation, but I want to ask you about how do you build a kitchen culture where you're at, and what are some of the most important things, the non-negotiables, if someone's coming into your kitchen? Like, okay, I know you might have worked other places, but this is how it is here.
I would say non-negotiables are, they have to have a great attitude. They have to be ready to learn. And they have to be professional.
Yeah. What does that look like, professional, to you?
I think showing up on time in the right headspace to learn and carry yourself thoughtfully and keeping the people around you in consideration. It's a small kitchen as well. And it's really important that everyone's got good energy. If someone's having a bad day, like, everyone can physically feel it. And I like to think Birdie's is the kind of place that if someone is having a bad day, the team can lift them up and support them, whether, they got broken up with their other half or whatever happened. They're just going through a rough patch. I really like the idea that your team is there to support you. And I look a lot to professional sports teams and NBA teams, and those teams you see that have such camaraderie. There is still a professionalism and a sense of holding people accountable, communicating well, being kind, and offering support.
How do you maintain the standard? Is there something that you do from a leadership perspective that doesn't allow the drift as standards start to deviate, or how do you constantly bring it back?
Yeah, I think holding people accountable is really important. So first, establishing the standard of what's expected. And there are the black and whites of the handbook, for example, that we give to everybody so they know the rule book. But then also, you can't just give out the handbook and walk away if you're not holding people accountable for the way they're speaking to each other, the way they're treating each other, the way they're taking care of our things, our equipment, things like that. Then we need to sit down and have a chat.
How do you deal with the really good cook with the really bad attitude?
We don't hire the really good cook with a really bad attitude.
But what if you've hired them and they snuck in? They put the mask on.
So if they snuck in, there needs to be sit downs about hey, you don't have the right attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And if we see this behavior continuing, seems like you're not going to be the right fit for our restaurant, because team culture is something we hold tight. And I would always rather have a greener, newer cook who has a great attitude, no ego, and is like ready to learn, than a cook who may have been whatever chef of whatever restaurant, but they don't have the right head on their shoulders.
Have you ever had to deal with that? I'm sure you have, but like
Not a
without
lot.
naming
Not a lot.
names.
Not often.
Yeah.
Not often.
Yeah, it's something that I mean, I think we all as chefs go through it. Like, you hire someone that's extremely talented and you're excited to get them in, and then they're just not a good fit. They just don't gel well with the rest of the team.
Yeah, I think it's important to always address it head on.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes in kitchens, like all workplaces, something feels gray. And I think if you feel that more than once, you need to have a sit down, because ultimately you can't let anyone skunk your team, no matter what profession you're in.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of times, sometimes young cooks come in and they have the mindset, which is it's a healthy mindset, to come in and say, I want to be the best. But sometimes they come in with the mindset of, I want to be the best at the expense of the team, right? Hurting them or making them look bad and things like that. And I personally have a problem with it, and I know I've struggled with it throughout my career, where I might leave the bad apple too long because they were really good at cooking, before I realized, you know what, they got to go because they're more of a detriment. I know that now, through being burned a couple of times. But I think it's something that young cooks need to understand, is like, the team is more important than the individual. I always used to joke around and say, I want the Justice League. I don't want just Batman. Right.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Birdie's is really successful when the team as a whole is clicking.
Yeah.
That being said, I always tell the team, like, you're here, yes, you're making a paycheck and getting great benefits, but you're also improving yourself and what you can do. Because cooking, I think the young cooks want to chase what title they have before they tackle their skill set. And what they need to be doing is learning how to cook, and what they can cook, and that versatility is so important. And that's something I'm always teaching my cooks. It's like, you may just be line cook at Birdie's, but what I'm teaching you is so much more. And so I think if cooks are really focused on, the next 10, 15 years of their career rather than just the next year, and they have a more open-minded approach to it, they're going to be so much more successful. And like me talking to them about, I never rose through the ranks quickly. I was very slow to move up, and it did my time. But now that I'm at Birdie's, I have so much confidence.
Yeah.
I know I'm not perfect, but I'm confident we're going to figure it out really quick.
Yeah.
And it's so much fun. I don't recipe test for ages. Granted, we cook simple food. I'm not saying we're doing complicated things, and no disrespect to anyone who does complicated things and needs to do extensive recipe testing. Like, I respect it. Many incredible chefs function that way. I just like to cook this way. And it took me many years of doing the grind of being a line cook to be able to do this and cook in the way we do.
My wheels are turning. I want to ask you this, because you know how to cook very well, and you've worked in some great places. But you also run a really good business.
Thank you.
So for people listening, because I think they might benefit from hearing from you, at what point did you start transitioning from your I'm a chef, I'm a cook, I'm in the kitchen, to I need to start understanding the business? And was it difficult?
I think this is a great question, especially for the cooks out there, because I think before you can even think about the business, you need to think of yourself as a professional. So not only should you be, as a cook, learning how to cook, but there's more to that. It's, how do you show up every day? How do you communicate with people? People don't speak enough in kitchens about communicating clearly and respectfully, and I think the great chefs of the world are the ones who are great communicators. You have the technicians who are so talented, and so many of those amazing technical chefs never really have their moment the way they could if they would have learned how to communicate and lead a team. And I think, things like reading leadership books, working on that kind of personal building your own, shaping your own leadership voice. They're so important to be a chef. And I think once you're working on that, and that can even help you transition to when you become a manager of people. And then from there, yes, the business side of it. And, when I was at Gramercy Tavern, we would do occasional P&L meetings with the team, and that showed me a little bit of behind the scenes. Numbers, I understand. It's not my passion. So I think, when cooks start thinking about, and chefs start thinking about their own place, like, who are your business partners? It's important to partner up with people who have strengths you don't have, And like, for example, our job does payroll. I hate doing payroll. That is like the worst thing in the world. He just handles it.
Yeah.
I don't have to make a schedule. We decided to open just 5 days a week. So everybody works 5 days a week. Easy,
Yeah.
And I think thinking about creating the space you want and then saying, okay, how do I put those pieces together from a business perspective? Because you can have the best chef in the world, but you don't have the right GM or business partner.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not going to work out.
And a lot of chefs, when they're like you said, learn how to cook. When you begin your career, learn how to cook, work in kitchens, work with everything, cut everything, chop everything, butcher everything, cook fish, cook meat, undercook fish, burn a stock, like make all the mistakes that you can, and then taste your mistakes, and then fix your mistakes and understand how you fixed them. But a lot of times you're so focused on the culinary acumen that there's almost this subconscious management instruction that you're learning, because you're not thinking about it, but you're learning it. And how you're learning it is by the people that are managing you, because you're watching how they behave. And so you think, well, I'm not really thinking about management. I'm just learning that my chef does it this way. So when I'm the chef, I'm just going to do it that way because I've been so focused on cooking. So I'm going to just go to my default settings of how I was raised in the kitchen. With that being said, how were you raised in the kitchen, and how does it translate now to how you lead your team at Birdie's?
I was lucky enough to work for some extremely talented chefs. I would say some of the most talented chefs in the country. I think some were great leaders and great humans, and I think others, not so much. And I think what I did is I took the things I wanted to take and the things I admired and just left the things that I didn't want to take. And, we're all humans. Nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
And, they probably also learned from a mentor who wasn't maybe the best communicator, who was more old school, who had a style that maybe got frustrated, maybe threw something, maybe said something disrespectful to their cook. And that's just what they knew, and I don't necessarily fault them for that. I just was like, that's not for me, and everyone needs to run their kitchen how they want to. And I'm excited about the continual professional growth and evolution of our industry. I think, like I mentioned before, Gramercy Tavern was a very professional place to work. The way we communicated was still pushing for excellence, but also how are we treating each other? Because that matters. And my first restaurant I ever cooked at, Lula Cafe in Chicago, Illinois. Jason and Leah were the co-chefs and co-owners. Now, Leah's not so much involved in the business. It's still Jason. And shout out, he won a James Beard for hospitality the first time in 25 years last year, which is awesome. But the way they treated us was like, you're part of our community. We're going to respect you, but we're also going to hold you accountable. I think it's important that people understand this is a job, A, but B, it's like, we're going to treat you with respect, and we're going to give, and you're also going to give. This isn't a one-way street either way. I worked at restaurants, I'm sure you did too, where you just felt like you were giving and giving and giving, and you learned how to cook maybe, but like, that's kind of all you got. And so you leave a little empty, a little bitter. And I think life is so much more than that. I think if we really want people to make this a career, there has to be a work-life balance. There has to be communication with respect. There has to be, cooks are coming to a reason with a mission, for a reason, with a goal. Everyone's got a common goal in mind. And you need to nurture them to get them where they need to go. There are cooks who might show up and say, okay, I want to learn this and this, and I want to make a dish with you. And it's just like, whoa. Let's start at ground one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's start from here. And and you're going to work hard and I'm going to teach you. But it takes time and you need to be patient. And hopefully we're going to all go to the moving goal together. And I think that's really exciting. And I'm excited to see our industry continue to progress because there's so many chefs I respect in our industry who are growing their team kind of with a similar mindset. And that I really think is the future. And the old school way of yelling and demoralizing, I look forward to that being a thing of the past.
Yeah, well, and you hit the nail on the head earlier. It's a communication issue, right? You don't know how to communicate, so you communicate through, outbursts or whatever the case may be. But if you knew how to communicate better, they would understand it. You would make sure that they understood it correctly before you let them loose in the wild. You'd have much fewer frustrations. All of that begins with communication, and it's something that I understood later in my career because I was that chef that, oh, you don't get it, and I'm going to get upset about it. But later on, once I really focused on I mean, this is just me, but I really focused on psychology. That's really where I gained most of my leadership lessons. I read a ton of psychology and leadership books. And what I realized is that it was much easier to manage people once I understood people and how they learn and how they react. I'm in a lot of these chef group chats, and in the conversation, people are talking about the margins and how difficult it is, and with inflation and rising costs, and how difficult it is. And then I'm in a different group chat. So one group chat is restaurant operators. The other group chat I'm in is like cooks who are complaining they're not getting paid enough and the industry sucks. And it's interesting because in both, this is something that I said, and maybe I said it, maybe someone else said it, but I'll take credit. So if you're in that chat and you said it, sorry. But I don't think that, because they're like, the restaurant industry sucks. It's like, well, it doesn't. I love cooking. I love hospitality. Sometimes the business model is a little bit difficult because it's difficult to get consumers to pay more for the product that we're paying. So, we're working against that as an industry. And because of that, we have small margins in general. So because of the small margins, people make a fair wage based on the margin that we're working with.
Right.
But the industry is not bad. It's a great industry. You get to cook, you get to make delicious food. You work with all sorts of people, and hospitality is amazing. So, I think sometimes in general, I would say, and this is just my perspective, in general, I think the business model is driving a lot of the issues that people don't like about the business, but the business is amazing. Who doesn't want to cook food and take care of people and work with, crazy pirates?
Yeah, I think the business, can be amazing if it's built intentionally and thoughtfully.
Yeah.
I think embracing new ideas is really important as we continue to evolve and navigate through this wild world we're living in. And I think you hit the nail on the head with the psychology thing. I think that's something I have a lot of pride that we offer a fantastic suite of insurance benefits, and a lot of our team uses. There's like a therapy app through that's free and are very, very affordable. And we also have subsidized mental therapy through a company on the side as well. So I think giving professionals those tools to work on themselves, they can show up and be their best person in their personal life and their professional life, and I think that's so important. I think, talking about the angry chef who gets frustrated and doesn't have the tools, I didn't even know what the word or the phrase mental hijack was until like 2 years ago.
What does it mean? I don't know that phrase.
When you get mentally hijacked, it's kind of like, let's say you're on the pass, someone brings up, you've got VIP chef in, someone passes up, we're plating, these 4 dishes for this VIP table, and one of the things is hammered. It's already been 19 minutes. It's going to refire. It's going to take another 15 minutes. Oh my God, what are we going to do? I'm going into mental hijack. I'm pissed off. Oh my God, is the next piece of meat tempered? Like, where are we at? And I think that kind of moment where you're just like,
yeah,
I'm about to lose it, and I no longer have control. That is mental hijack.
Okay.
And so I think something we talk about a lot with our sous chefs and just our team in general is when you start feeling yourself overwhelmed, just take a deep breath and try to reset and make sure you have control over your mind and your emotions don't take over, because that is when the yelling, the screaming, whatever, that happens. And so I think and it's hard when you're in intense service and you have people you really want to impress. That is a great challenge. But the more we become aware of our own emotions, the better leaders we're going to be.
Yeah, I agree. It's a complicated business. The restaurant business, it's always going to be the people business, always, right? You're dealing with people that you work with until the robots take over, but you're still going to deal with people in the kitchen cooking. You're still going to be serving people. And the better you are at working with people, I think the more successful you'll be in your career as a cook, as a chef, as a restaurateur, whatever the case might be, in hospitality in general. It's still the people business. Our job's great at that, by the way.
He is. He is a talented guy at that. And I think it's funny you joke around about technology and the robots, and we kind of joke about this too sometimes about AI. Our cooks are like, yeah, we're good. We're good because we do something that's kind of specialized. Like I think the robots might take over for McDonald's.
I agree.
But for cooking the food we cook, there's always going to be a market for that. So I think our team feels good about that.
Well, I think what's interesting about Birdie's, what's interesting about you is if I'm going to Birdie's, because I want to have your food. I don't want to have, and I don't care if it's different every time, by the way, if you're cooking it, you know what I mean? But the robot, it's like, well, I'm going because I want the McDonald's hamburger and I want my Big Mac to be right.
Yeah, and the same every time.
Every time. Don't change it. Yeah. I'm not going to McDonald's because I want it to be different and I want to get the expression of the line cook at McDonald's that day or the line robot. But when I go to Birdie's, I want you to cook for me. I don't care if it's something that you're just trying out. Like your food's good. And I know when you cook, it's going to be delicious because you're a phenomenal chef.
Thank you.
Anyway, we're all over the place today. But let me ask you. So when we get to my closing questions, if you had a bucket list of chefs that you'd want to cook for you, living or dead, who would you want? And you give me a few. You give me one or you give me a couple. Who would you want to cook for you? And ideally, people that you've never had their food.
I would say Roger Verger. I would say this might be controversial, Jamie Oliver.
Uh-huh.
I just love the way he cooks.
Yeah.
Like I love simple, straightforward, confident cooking. So yeah, one French Nouvelle chef and Jamie Oliver.
Okay, let's talk some station setup. On your station, what is the standard kitchen all-purpose salt for the kitchen? Like your diamond crystal, and for finishing,
Malden.
What about? Do you have a go-to acid or? Is it? I'm sure it's probably case by case. Like maybe like you said earlier, Banyuls for maybe the salad, maybe lemon for something else. But in general, if it's on your station at the pass and you're finishing, what's it going to be?
We use a lot of lemon at Birdie's.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if something's Italian, we'll kind of like a lot of red wine vinegar. It kind of depends on that region. French sherry vinegar. I love sherry vinegar.
Yeah.
I love champagne vinegar, but if I had to pick one, lemon.
How do you do your plate wipes at Birdie's?
We use linen likes and water, a tiny bit of distilled vinegar. There's a ratio. I don't know off the top of my head. And then wring them out just enough so they're moist, but not too wet, but not too dry.
Nice. And what about the tape? What color of tape are you using?
We use green.
You use green?
I used to be blue.
Yeah. Why'd you change?
I used to be blue and I was pro blue and then I shifted to green. One, because someone made the comment, they're like, well, that's what they do at the French Laundry because you can see it better. It makes sense. You can see it from a distance, what it says. And I was like, yeah, I agree with that. So we shifted to green.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was a blue person for a very long time. Actually, I was a blue person my entire culinary career. I've changed to green post culinary career. Mm-hmm. So now when I do a guest chef dinner or something like that, I go to green tape. But yeah. Culinary career, most of it was blue tape, but now I've changed my opinion on it.
Same.
If you had to teach the audience that's listening right now something that's maybe unique to you or to your style of cooking or the way that you run your kitchen that a lot of people don't do or a lot of people don't know that would significantly impact the flavor or the end result of the cooking?
I'd say two things. One, season throughout. Two, understand cooking aromatics. If you don't cook your aromatics enough, the flavor is never going to be fully developed and it's going to taste flat.
What do you mean? Can you expand on that?
So, for example, let me just throw a soup out there because soup's a good example of this. If you have, let's say, garlic, shallots or onions, leeks, a mixture of, or just one of them, it doesn't matter. And you're cooking, always start with the onions. We always start with the onions and olive oil. Season it with salt and start cooking. It shouldn't cook. If it cooks at a 10 out of a 10 high heat the entire time, it's not going to fully cook. The outsides are going to start turning brown and you're not going to fully get it sweat nicely and sweet. We like to turn down the heat to around medium, stir it often, and just make sure it should taste almost like candy.
Mm-hmm.
Fully cooked, no texture. And then you add what's next. So whether that's like the next vegetable, deglaze with wine if you're adding in that recipe, stock, aromatics, etc. But the most important part, even before you get to pureeing and everything, people think they need to blast the Vitamix for like 20 minutes. And it's like, no. That's not how you make a puree or a sauce or a soup creamy. You make it creamy. I mean, you need to puree it properly, yes, but you make it creamy by properly cooking the vegetables before. And, if you've got carrots or a vegetable where you need to like also cook that out because you need to open up the glucose and like let that pop. It's never going to taste the same if you just like add stock, throw in cold carrots and boil it. It's just not.
Yeah.
So I think understanding the basic science of sweating a vegetable and what that does is going to improve your cooking significantly. There's such a value in the sweetness of vegetables.
Yeah, I agree. For your sake, when do you add the protein? So let's say you're putting a little ham in there or something like that, or a little chicken or whatever in the soup. At what point do you add that? During the sweat, early or a little bit later?
Depends what it is. Yeah. Depends what the soup is. I think, if you're sweating pork, add that in after the onions, or like almost cooked probably. If you're, just steeping in like, I don't know, a chunk of pork fat or pork scat, that's a different thing. You could add with the aromatics. It just kind of depends.
What's your take on roasting meat today? So sorry, I've been talking to a lot about roasting meat, a little bit on the podcast, but a lot of conversations off. Mm-hmm. And when I say roasting meat, I mean bigger cuts. So like a prime rib or a Wellington or a rack of lamb or something like that, rack of pork. What is your approach to roasting meat so you get like the perfect end-to-end cook?
Let's see. So at Birdie's, we don't cook like that a ton, but that's more so like a home question for me. If I'm cooking a big cut, it kind of depends what it is as well. There's so many, like, it depends. Mm-hmm. I do like making sure it's, fully tempered. I like seasoning it early so it can permeate through the large cut that it is. Mm-hmm.
Are you pepper early or later?
I would probably definitely salt it early so that gets in there, and then probably pepper it closer to cooking. Mm-hmm. I'm not a huge spice person. I like spices. It depends what it is, but it's typically black pepper with meat. And then, like if it's a prime rib, I would probably I cooked a prime rib actually at Christmas, and for my family in Wyoming. And I think I did like really low and then high heat at the end.
Yeah.
I have reverse sear.
Yeah.
If you will.
Yeah. Well, the kids call it.
That's what the kids are calling it these days.
Yeah. I'm a fan of the reverse sear. Thank you for being on. Where can people find you on social media and in real life?
So you can find us in real life at, Birdie's 12th Street in Harvey in East Austin. On Instagram, I'm at Tracy Malechek, and at Birdie's Austin is our Instagram. Awesome.
It was good having you here. Say hi to our job for me. And because I don't think I've seen you both since the James Beard Awards. Congratulations to both of you for the award and all that, for our job as well. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show. If you want to support the show, you know what to do. Make sure you leave 5 stars, nothing less than 5 stars. If you listen on Apple, Spotify, if you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. Comment, let me know what you think of this episode. Go to chefspsa.com where you get everything, the books, the merch. Go buy a book, go buy a t-shirt, go buy a hoodie, go buy this hat. Beautiful and nice. Go get it. If you want early access to episodes, subscribe to my Substack. I'm going to link them in the show notes. We'll see you next week. Hit the porno music.
No Andre in the kitchen, mixing, dropping chef knowledge, no fiction. Stirring up the beats, heating up the session. Listen close, class is in session.